Well, welcome everyone to the first live episode of Sky U Pod. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to discussing Gopher football with you all today. This is our first live appearance on YouTube, so just bear with us here if there's a couple of technical issues. We'll get it going here. A reminder to all of you, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and available wherever you listen on for podcasts. So feel free to like and subscribe, spread awareness to the show, and we'll get some Gopher topics going here. We're joined by Max, Kurt. How are we doing today?
Not too bad.
Doing good.
Just making sure that we're up on YouTube. We are. There's 2 people in there. I'm one of them, so that's a good start. And if this goes well, we'll continue doing this. We just want to get it right by the time the regular season comes around. So there'll be a lot more discussion happening, I'm sure, then. But good to get this out of the way, and look forward to talking football.
Absolutely.
Before we really dive into our topics today, fellas, I think we should just kind of cover some of the Gopher news recent. Gophers, we've received some new recruits since our last show. So now we have total commitments for 2025 class is at 6. New commitments are 3-star tight end Cross Nemo. He's out of Ohio. Athletic 6'6" athlete from Rutgers. He had offers from Rutgers, Illinois, and Louisville. We did have a 3 to 4 star edge / outside linebacker, number 1 recruit in the state of Minnesota, Emmanuel Carmo. He had a ton of offers out there, including Ohio State, USC, and Wisconsin. Thrilled to have a guy like that on the team. And lastly, a 3-star recruit and number 2 receiver in the state, Cameron Begal. He led the state in receiving yards all last year and is known for his speed. Had offers from Army and Air Force. I think that he might have gone with the Gophers for obviously, a little more passing than you'll get at those 2 schools. But hey,
Sure,
a speedy wide receiver can never go wrong with that. Long ways from over for the Gophers, Gophers are at 34th in recruiting classes across the country. But yeah, fellas, what do you think? What do you think about these 3 guys?
I like it for now. It's just tough to get super excited until they're actually on campus, just with, how they can change their mind. And, last year we saw some higher up commits get flipped last second by getting some money thrown at them. But yeah, overall, really encouraged. The class is shaping up pretty good so far. A lot of big offers for those guys. So it'll be important to keep recruiting them, even though they gave the verbal. But yeah, getting the number 1 player in the state is huge. Back-to-back years now with Coy and now the Robinson Cooper. Oh wow, Cooper Edge. Similar to Boye Mafe, they're saying. So that would be huge if we can get him to stay around.
Yeah, it's always nice when you can get a guy who's getting offers from Ohio State and USC. It seems like the last couple of, since PJ's came here, it seems like we've been able to have a pretty good run of getting at least the top 1 or 2 recruits in Minnesota. So it's nice to keep those guys in state. But yeah, like you said, Spencer, the wide receiver out of Andover coming to Minnesota, hopefully going to be catching more passes than he would at an academy school. But hard to really tell when you look at the stat sheet, and we're right up there with Navy and Army and Air Force in terms of time of possession and how many times we run the football, but we'll see.
Right. And I always like to see the hometown guys sticking in Minnesota. I think you got to hold on to your own as best you can, especially if they are great athletes that get offers.
Builds the culture, as PJ would say.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that he's got that going, So on the downside of things, the portal reopened, as you guys know. Some Gopher players did decide to hop in. The players are the freshman offensive tackle, Derek Mister, redshirt sophomore Tyreek Watson at cornerback. He played in all 13 games last year. That one stings a little bit. Redshirt sophomore inside offensive lineman Cade McConnell, and then former 4-star defensive lineman Trey Bigsby. who had previously medically retired, decides to enter his name in the portal. That's an interesting one, I thought. But what do you guys think? Any standout guys you think from that list?
I mean, Tariq Watson is definitely the biggest impact to lose, just with his experience from last season in the cornerback position. Kind of being a big question mark in terms of where on the depth chart you look for weaknesses, but overall, not a huge impact. Like no starters really, major starters that are leaving. And like you said, Spence, Trey Bixby, I guess being able to come back to play after deciding to medically retire, good for him. And I'm sure he took a look at who he got at the defensive line position and thought he's probably not going to get much playing time trying to come back. But yeah, just interesting that he's able to do that. But I guess good for him.
Yeah, I think it hurts the depth more than anything. I mean, Tariq Watson, like you said, Max, he played significantly last year. Rumors had it that he's down to like fourth or fifth on the depth chart now, but with Justin Wally and the other transfer brought in at corner, he's probably shaping up to play significant time next year, if not still getting rotated in this year. So just the new challenges you're facing these days with the portal about trying to replenish your depth and just be ready in case one of those top guys goes down. So that part's unfortunate. Also, the McConnell, the interior lineman that we lost, I think he was up into the second on the depth chart. So again, more depth potentially that you're losing. Sucks to lose the young guys before they get a chance to really show what they can do, but if that's the worst we do this portal season, I can definitely live with it. And hopefully we can add some new faces, bring some guys in to help build back up that depth.
Yeah. I will say the Bigsby portal, that's an interesting one. I thought that he was going to be a solid D lineman that came in for the Gophers. He medically retires, kind of hurts, and now he's in the portal. Maybe he missed a lot of football, like just missed it personally last year. Maybe he thinks he can get out in the field again. Obviously, that's great. We're thrilled that he can perform at a high level, regardless of his medical ailments. But
I just assume that one was probably more, he medically retired. We brought in bodies, I'm sure, to replace him. So I'm not sure where his spot really stood at this point on the actual team. Probably was a mutual decision that if he wanted to come back and play, that it was probably best to look elsewhere. It's just what I'm assuming. I haven't read that anywhere, but I got him at, coaches try and fill these spots, these holes on their depth chart as quick as they can. So when someone does unfortunately medically retire, I'm sure they tried to replace him as quick as they could. So that's probably what happened with that.
Right. Well, with all that, let's kind of jump into our first topics, fellas. Number one, we do know that across college football, all coaches are under immense pressure to get W's. It's necessary if you want to keep your job. And we thought it would be a good idea to take a look at our Gophers and look at the coaching staff and discuss which coach might be facing the most pressure this upcoming season. Curdy, let's start with you. What coach stands out to you the most?
Yeah, I think there's a fair argument, and it's probably true that the head coach always has the most pressure on them. But, you look at PJ's situation, UCLA came calling this summer. He got that contract amendment, which basically a pay raise, and also his buyout now, fellas. If he were to have a tough season this year and the Gophers wanted to move on, they pretty much can't. His buyout's over $22 million for this season. In the following year, it's still over $18 million. And not that I'm thinking he's going to need to be fired. I'm just talking about when you look at who's going to be under the most pressure. So that kind of makes me look at the coordinators. And you look at the offense pretty much since that 2019 season's really struggling. Last year, Greg Harbaugh Jr. got promoted to offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator and QB's coach. And you look at just how that season went, we finished with the 102nd scoring offense in the nation, 20 points per game, 122nd in yards per game, including the 126th passing offense. And again, that's with Ethan, and I know he took a lot of the blame, and maybe it was a lot of the quarterback play, but that was somebody that PJ was kind of all in on as a 4-star kid out of Illinois. So, and he had shown glimpses of having successful games in the past, whether it be the 300-yard game against Wisconsin a couple years ago or the second half comeback against Nebraska as well. So whatever, you moved on, you got a whole new quarterback room in. I just look at if the offense struggles again this year, after you went out and got a player like Max Brosmer, who had all these, led the FCS in passing, you made it clear that he was your guy going forward. You went all in on him now. You got a veteran offensive line. You have a pretty deep running back room led by a stud and Darius Taylor. I'm just curious that if this offense has the same struggles again this year and doesn't show any sign of improvement, I wonder what PJ is looking to do at offensive coordinator. I'm not saying he'll outright fire Greg Harbaugh, and obviously not advocating for that, but you have two young guys that you're very high on with Drake Lindsay and then the newest commit, Jackson Collick, which is now PJ's highest quarterback commit he's ever had. If this offense struggles again this year, do you want to trust Greg Harbaugh Jr., who's never been a quarterback coach until now, this last year and now currently, to develop those guys and lead your program forward? I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that, but hopefully a lot of the issues aren't within the coordinators. Obviously, PJ didn't feel that way when reviewing the tape. They just went out and basically reshuffled that whole room. I'm just saying, if the struggles continue, he might be compelled to switch some stuff up there.
Max, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to disagree, and I think he probably does have the most pressure on him, especially just with all the change and the offense being what it is and kind of needing to be better just all over the place. So I think you made a good point. I think the name that popped in my head, just as another guy that could be feeling the pressure this year, is Danny Collins. He's the safeties and defensive passing game coordinator. I think what stood out is really he's kind of had a quick rise through the ranks. When he came to Minnesota in 2017, started off as a defensive quality control, kind of bounced around between grad assistant, quality control, defensive analyst, those sorts of things. I think he was an interim position coach a couple times in the bowl games those years. But in 2022 is when he was promoted to be the safeties position coach. And last year, also given the title of defensive pass game coordinator. And I believe he was also the one calling the plays against Bowling Green in the bowl game after Joe Rossi left. So he's moved up quickly. His career is definitely progressing. And I think, obviously, for a guy like him, his goal is eventually to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. We did hear his name get tossed around as a potential option, kind of a dark horse, who within the program could be promoted to be the defensive coordinator before we brought in Corey Heatherman. But, for now, I think this is a big prove-it year for him. We've always had guys on roster that are clear NFL, have the clear NFL potential, like the Antoine Winfields, the Jordan Howans, the Tyler Nubins. You could argue Coy Parrish is that guy, but being a true freshman, it's pretty unfair to just assume, if he doesn't perform well the first couple of years, that's all on Danny Collins. But I think this is a true test for his player development. What can you do with Darius Green and Coleman Bryson? They're younger guys that, Darius Green's got some experience. Coleman Bryson had some experience in the Pinstripe Bowl. We saw his touchdown return on the pick six. But what can he do when he doesn't have the star power that we've had in the past? And if he really is going to be a potential defensive coordinator in the future, he's kind of got to prove it now with the talent he's got. So I think he could feel some pressure. Maybe you could argue the opposite, that because they don't have that star power like they're used to, that maybe this is a freebie year for him. But I don't know. I think just with how fast he's been going up the career ladder, he's got to keep progressing. So I'd throw Danny Collins' name.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm curious to see what that secondary looks like this year, just with I'm already blanking on our new guy's name, the new D coordinator, but with him coming in
Corey
and PJ
Heatherman.
Yeah, thank you, Heatherman. I'm curious just what it looks like back there, because while Newbin was fantastic last year, there were just some weird lapses by that group in general, the safeties in general. So PJ's talked about Heatherman coming in and just kind of throwing out parts that weren't needed. I'm curious if that's going to allow that group, even though probably not overall as talented. I mean, you're losing Tyler Newman, who might go in the first round here next week in the NFL draft. So obviously that sucks. But I'm wondering what that group looks like this next year. If it's just more simplified, maybe somewhat simpler coverages for them to just fly around and make plays, and hopefully a little bit less of the big plays given up that we kind of saw at key times last year. You know, the Northwestern game stands out, the Illinois end of the game post, that one really sucked. But yeah, that's a fair point to make, Max. Yeah.
I think both of you made great points. I would like to maybe make the point of Corey Heatherman having the most pressure this season. And here's why. Barring last season with Joe Rossi, the defense was tremendous under his tenure. I mean, ranked some of the top in the nation, and, as far as points allowed, giving up the run, et cetera, et cetera. When you have a defense that was like that for a few years straight, except for last year, like you said, Kurt, a lot of those blown up plays by Tyler Newman, and we lose the Illinois game, I think, by just blown coverage that should not ever happen. I just think that if this defense does not, at least if it's not on par with it was last season and they regress further, I don't think that's a good look. We know that this offense doesn't need a lot to really improve, right? You have Darius in the backfield. I'm confident that our running game is going to be solid. It's always solid. It's going to be there. Brosmer just has to make a few passes. There's a lot of weapons on the edge. Assuming that our passing game improves slightly, and it's not really a big ask this season for the passing game to improve. As long as that happens and you still run the ball effectively, I don't see how that is a loss for Harbaugh, right? I just think that he needs to maybe improve upon last year. Now, is that what we want? I'd like to see a big jump, of course. But
I think you're making the passing game sound easier to fix than it is. Something's wrong with this passing game. I mean, is it really as simple as that we haven't had another Rashad Bateman since that 2019 season? I know Bateman stuck around for 2020, but nothing really happened there.
No. It isn't that. No, it is not that. But I do sometimes feel as if we're running too much, right? If you're running X amount of, 30 to 40 times a game, that's a problem. Now, is it a result as PJ not trusting us throwing the ball, or does he want to stick to his guns that he knows that we'll win the game by running the ball? I don't know. I feel like that needs to be seen. I'll give you an example. The Nebraska game. What was wrong with the offense during the Nebraska game? Throwing the ball. There was nothing wrong with that. And then you totally regress from doing that the entire rest of the season. To me, that's a problem. That tells me that PJ decided not to do that anymore for no reason. It's not like the passing game didn't work against Northwestern. We never went back to it. Yeah. So to me, it's like if you can show a glimmer of that first game against Northwestern, that to me, that means you can probably improve through the duration of the season. Hopefully that happens. Defensively, I don't know, like if they get worse on defense, and we have an offense that cannot really score at will, that's going to be a problem for the Gophers. And I think as a result, PJ will look at the defense rather than the offense as the culprit. And so I think that puts pressure on Heatherman.
It's a fair point. I guess my counterpoint, if I were going to argue with Harbaugh, would just be that, PJ's made changes pretty quickly at O coordinator before when we fired Sanford after basically a year under the Tanner Morgan. Got one comment here. Cam's, he thinks the problem's having coordinators. Well, I think that's part of it too. I don't know how much Simon has a say in calling plays. So I would imagine it's Harbaugh that's there, But yeah, I think the thing might be more of just a way to keep them both here and paid. I think that they kind of default to D coordinators, offensive coordinators. But yeah, I mean, Simon's been here a long time, and I think a lot of people just assumed he would be the next guy in line to take over. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely worth looking at if one is having a heavier influence in like one aspect of the game, like passing compared to running. But you know,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Are you guys surprised at all that Matt Simon is still here as a wide receivers coach? And I say
Who would
that
hire?
because, well, I say that because like he's been so good, but he hasn't. I'm surprised he just hasn't left. I guess with how well he's done.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, have Simon more involved in the passing game. That could, I mean, yeah, it hasn't been the same since 2019. I don't mind that idea at all. But I think we'll find out a lot this year. You know, if it struggles again, I would be surprised if Simon wouldn't get more involved. Now that I think about it, just because PJ's been basically
Yeah.
working hard to get back to that 2019 offense. And to your point, Max, I'm just not sure where he could really go. He could probably leave for another like as another receiver coach, but I'm not sure where he's going to go. That's as high up as here right now, especially just the last couple of seasons of us being able to throw the football. Like I don't
Right.
see what job would be open to him, to be honest. He probably peaked after that like 2020-ish around then
True.
to as far as his job market, but he could
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're right, maybe he agrees that the guy ahead of him has the most pressure on him this year, and
Well,
the next best
yeah,
available job is maybe right next
that's
door.
right. That's right.
Yeah. I just think that I'm surprised that because Cam's is right. It's odd that Simon never really fully got the keys to the car, especially after that 2019 season. I know, like at the beginning, maybe he was just new to it, and we've gone through offensive coordinators, but he was always still the offensive coordinator. And
Yeah.
I wonder what that is that's holding. I wonder why PJ is holding him back from having full control over that. And
Well,
you're
I
right,
think
Kurt. The is just to hold on to him.
right. I think you could say PJ's maybe held back every offensive coordinator he's had as far as what they're allowed to call in certain situations. I mean, even Soraka, we've heard stories of Soraka being told what to call in certain situations. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
Cam just
that's
threw in there
that's
too.
that was my point about you know the offense, right? I don't think that you have to show a huge jump to prove that you're going to be the guy. I think if you can just incrementally improve off of last, this is I'm thinking through PJ's mind, right? Oh, we threw way better than last year, even though it wasn't, to
For
standards of the
sure.
Big Ten, way better for us. He's going to look at that as a win, I
Well,
think.
of course. I just don't think it's as easy to get to that point as you think. I was thinking about this. How many years? There's like 2 years in a row now, me specifically, but us on the show have talked about how we've brought in transfers at receivers. We've revamped this receiver room, so it should be better. And the passing attack hasn't been the same. So I'm kind of at a wait and see standpoint as far as this passing game goes. Yeah, I like the guys. I'm hearing great things. PJ's saying great things about everybody again, but I just don't know. I got to see it first. But yeah, Simon did call the Auburn game in the bowl game. I think the thought there was that Soraka had the game plan in place, but I mean, you still got to know when to switch it up and when to call the play. So yeah, Simon did a good job. I will say I was a little bit more surprised when Soraka left the second time that they didn't go to the back to Simon as the full time guy there, but and with Greg Harbaugh, PJ saw something, so we'll see how it goes. These are kind of two of like his foster childs, if you will, guys that he's brought in and kind of mentored up so far. So PJ is a loyal guy, so we'll see where it goes from here.
Well, fellas, with that, let's get to our second topic of the day. You know, we've always talked about, and we mentioned a little bit earlier today, about how the transfer portal is open and it's a big part of college football these days, and it's not going to go away. So, to you all listening out there, we thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at some of the transfers that the Gophers have received and predict which player will have the biggest impact for the Gophers this season. Um, I'll go ahead and start with this, guys. I think that it's the obvious answer. We were talking about the offense. We're needing to see improvement. Max Brosmer. I just think that he's going to be that guy. Hopefully, that can take us to the next step offensively. He's got experience. He's a guy that hopefully can just lead this team to hopefully, I don't know, just see confidence in him and have PJ have confidence in him as well. I just think that ultimately PJ has not trusted his quarterbacks. And I think that when you look at Brosmer, last season, right, he's throwing for 3,400 yards, almost 3,500 yards, 29 touchdowns. He has a long touchdown throwing of 80 yards, for example. He's running the ball sometimes too, here and there, 126 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns. Not really a total dual threat quarterback, but if he needs to use his legs maybe to get a first down or just run it in the end zone, he'll do that. So I think the tangible things are there. But, because this offense is such a focus, like we were talking about, I just think that this guy has to be the guy to make the biggest impact on the Gophers this season. And I think that he'll do that.
Yeah. To your point, I think if he finishes like in the middle of the Big Ten in the major passing categories, I think that means we had a really successful season, because I think that's all that's needed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice that he can come in with a lot of experience too. Even at the FCS level, it's just nice that we have a guy that at some level has proved it. I mean, he has been productive, and yeah, hopefully that's the missing piece to this offense, like you guys were talking about. But yeah, for me, I can go next. I think flipping over the defensive side of the ball, I think I mentioned it a little bit ago about the cornerback position maybe being a little bit of a weakness, a spot that definitely needs some help. We brought in Ethan Robinson, corner out of Bucknell, another FCS guy, but he does also come in with 31 games of experience. Sounds like he's pretty skilled in coverage and when he has to come up and make tackles. And then even according to his PFF grades in the Patriot League, he was a top graded overall cornerback, and he also led the conference in pass breakups. So again, take it for what you will, being playing with the talent he's playing with, but he was the best in that conference. He's long. He seems like he's lanky, so he's got that advantage that he can kind of play in space. And I don't know. I think it was pretty telling too. It seemed like when Tariq Watson did jump in the portal, that I would read that as Ethan Robinson is definitely the number 2 guy behind Justin Wally.
Yeah.
I think you see a guy fly up like that. He comes in, flies with the depth chart. Watson wants to go play somewhere else. That's fine, but I think that's a good sign for Ethan Robinson that he has been performing well this spring. So hopefully he can be an impact player opposite of Wally.
Yeah, I like it. I think you guys hit the biggest two. I went with the running back from Ohio, Saya Ben-Gira. I've heard it's pronounced like that. I'm not exactly sure, but we'll see how that goes. So he's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He looks huge. I thought he was going to weigh more, to be honest, watching his highlights. He looks like a big, powerful back, which, given how much we like to run the ball, I'm assuming, obviously don't want it to happen, that Darius Taylor will get dinged up and need a breather at some point. So I went with Ben-Gira. Underrated stat about him, he has 50 catches in his career at Ohio in 2 seasons. So we keep hearing about how running backs have been running more routes in these early spring practices, working on catching the football. So he brings that to his arsenal of what he can bring to this team, I think that's a good sign. Yeah, like I said, big back, over 1,800 career yards at Ohio. Was named the MAC Freshman of the Year, I believe, as well, when he was there. So a guy that's shown some ability, and just that whole room in general, I think, is in a much better state than it was last year, when if it was no Darius Taylor, then we were kind of in trouble. So we got Michael Bostrom here. We might know that guy. Ethan Robinson is a dog, so he likes your pick, Max. Nice job. But yeah, if you guys were to take this conference wide, though, just a lot of transfers happening, 18 teams here now. Who would you think, Spencer? We'll go ahead. Who do you think is the guy that could have the biggest impact on the conference as far as who transferred in?
That's a great question. I think I'm going to go with the obvious answer to what I think is obvious here. I think it's going to be Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. They're a great team. They really are. Oregon, the Ducks are a great team coming in the Big Ten this first season. They want to make a statement this year, first time in the conference. And additionally, there's a lot of spots to be had in the college football playoff. And I think that Gabriel is the guy that can kind of get them over the hump. If you all remember last year, Oklahoma he single handedly tore up Texas, who made it to the CFP. And I just think that this guy fits the Oregon system well. He's athletic. He throws the ball. He's just got all those skills that I think that it takes for the Ducks to do what they are trying to do.
Yeah.
And then looking at the competition across the Big Ten, I just think that this guy is someone that you need to be able to hopefully beat the Ohio States, the Michigans. I don't know who the Ducks have on their schedule this year, but they end up playing one of those teams,
They're lucky they avoid us. That's all I can say.
Right. I just think that when you have guys like that, Heisman potential, players, they're the difference between winning and losing those tight games against the big time blue blood teams.
Sure.
So I think that he's just going to be a game changing player for the Ducks and the whole conference.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think when I was looking at this, I was looking at it almost from a, not so much who got the best player, but who got the biggest improvement at a position that they needed. And I think one guy that stood out to me that didn't initially, we looked on the list. This wasn't a guy that his name didn't really jump off the list, but I went with Julian Fleming, the wide receiver coming from Ohio State, going to Penn State. I think looking at Penn State, their leading receiver in 2023, Keandre Lambert-Smith, he is also in the portal, so they need to replace him. You could argue that Julian's potentially even an improvement from him. So even if he was staying, he might be the number one guy anyways. And then just looking at the Penn State offense, they've got the running backs, they've got the quarterback. Looking at the receivers last year, Lambert-Smith led them in receiving. The next guys were a tight end, a running back, and then the next wide receiver, who's also transferring in Cephas. So they needed help at that wide receiver position a lot. And I think they got their guy, one of the better Big Ten transfers that's coming in. So for Penn State, I think that's huge. As far as a need, I think they got the best available.
That's a good point. I probably went with the easiest one. I went with Caleb Downs, the Alabama safety, going to Ohio State. Kind of the opposite of you, Max. I think he is the best player that transferred in. PFF grade, I had it here. PFF grade of 85.6 overall, and he was a true freshman, I believe. Fourth in the SEC in tackles. Led Alabama in tackles. Punt, return, touchdown, forced fumble, 2 picks. Second team All-American according to the press. First team All-American SEC. Yeah, guy's just an absolute game changer. I mean, I don't want to throw out like too big of names, but he's just a dog out there. He's like a Charles Woodson-esque player. Doesn't play both ways, but he is a game changer. We'll go Honey Badger. Honey Badger return punts, didn't play offense. He's like Honey Badger, essentially, is what he looks like out there, but bigger and a little bit more physical. You just take Ohio State's defense and how good they were last year, and then you just add this absolute weapon on the back end that can do so much for you and change the game for you on the back end. I just think it probably puts your defense safely in the top 2 to 3 units in the country with him back there. And just the threat to go out and make plays that normally wouldn't be made. So the rich get richer, as they say, and Ohio State got the best player in the portal in Caleb Downs. And a lot of people think he'd be the first safety taken in this year's draft if he was draft eligible, but he's too young. So just an absolute stud, and I'm sure we'll see him in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, coming in to replace Proctor, too. You see that guy go to the NFL, you're thinking, well, now what? Oh, maybe he got better, which is really, really hard to do when you have a guy go to the NFL. But
Right.
Yeah, there's one thing with this transfer portal, it's a little chaotic, but when you kind of see those fits into systems that are likely going to work, it's kind of cool. It's cool to see Gabriel go into Oregon, see what that'll look like. Um,
It's so weird
and
that they're here. I can't grab my head
it is
around.
odd. It's odd. It's not. I don't want to say that I can, condone this transfer portal kind of chaos, but
Yeah.
I definitely think that there'll be a lot of excitement around the Big Ten this season. Can't wait. Hopefully, the
Oh,
Gophers can land some more
well,
solid transfers.
if we get Jackson Howard, the number one player from the 2023 class, spent his freshman year at LSU, jump back in the portal. We offered him. He's got a lot of offers. Sparty's after him. I think Washington offer. He's got a lot of offers right now. But he did keep us in his top 3 initially when he committed to LSU. If he came back home and you had him and Ja Joyner on the field at the same time rushing after the
Ooh,
passer, that would do wonders for you. I mean, I don't know the last time. Maybe Boye Mafe and number 9 could never pronounce his name. Guy drafted by the Vikings.
that's
Seze
Omo.
Tomiwo.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to say it, but I mean, those were the last 2 edges you had probably that were both above average, like really good pass rushers. You get Jackson Howard back here and Ja Joyner, and then you mix in Anthony Smith and Striganell behind them. That's a really, really deep quality defensive ends for anyone in the Big Ten, but especially the Gophs. Would be huge, and I'd be willing to change my answer to him if he commits. But we'll see. Got to drink some duck beer to make sure we can have the ammo to go after him. But we'll see what happens there.
That's right. That's right. Well, those are our topics for today, fellas. To all of you watching, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sky U Pod, our first live episode on YouTube. Seemed to run pretty smoothly. Good
It's
job,
on
Cody,
X
for
as well, I
setting.
believe. I didn't
Oh,
have that up to
well,
check
hey,
though, but yeah,
good job setting all that
we do
up,
appreciate
Cody.
the comments. It creates more discussion. You can feel free to call us dumb, whatever you want, but appreciate
Yeah.
you guys tuning in and commenting as well.
Yeah, Cams, Mike, thanks a lot for shooting us those comments. And to all of you out there, feel free to shoot us some comments during these live sessions. Ask us some questions, make your thoughts heard. Let us get some thinking and conversation going around our hometown Gophers. So thank you.
And if you're a diehard and
Um,
want to jump on, shoot us a DM. Like, we don't care. We'll have anybody on. Just don't say anything dumb.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, dumb isn't inappropriate. I have plenty of dumb takes. If you want to say wild takes, that's fine. But
Yeah. We'd love to have some of you good Gopher fans on with us. Yeah, be sure to go ahead and check us out on YouTube, X, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Like and subscribe the videos. We encourage you to check out thecollegehuddle.com, where you can find many more college football podcasts and articles. Thank you for tuning in, you Gophers. We're signing off. Sky Uma, go Gophers.